Hello, everyone. I think I know most of you, but for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Miss Harlow. I work in the office. I do attendance and phones. If you ever need like a Band-Aid or a late slip or anything, you've probably seen me there. So I work here full time in the office, doing all sorts of office-y things, but I also really like writing. And so on the side, I write books. That's my thing. I like to write as books. So I pursue that in my free time, and I actually have a book coming out in the fall. My first book, it's coming out in October. It's called The Butterfly's Sting, and it's about a boxer, teenage boxer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of school and stuff. Laura's here. Hello, welcome. So I'm going to talk about kind of getting this book written and ready for publishing, and kind of school and things, and how I got here, and how you get a book published. The main things, kind of the main three things you'll need to become a published author or have something published is obviously to write something, right? To have a completed project that is of kind of publishable quality. You'll want to get an agent. I will talk about what that is more in a bit. And you'll want to have a publisher / a book deal. And I'll talk about that as well. These are kind of the three main things to get a book published. I'm going to skip the activity because I ran out of time last time. So for kind of writing something, getting it done, a little about me. This is a picture of me from high school. I've always really liked reading, and that was kind of my favorite thing when I was young. And then when I was in kind of middle school, high school, I got into creative writing, and I started doing that like as a hobby outside of school and things. And I had just a lot of fun doing that, and I was writing kind of goofy stories. And I didn't finish much, but I just had a good time. So I decided, I think when I'm older, I think I want to do this. I think I want this to be my career. So when I went to college, I went to Brigham Young University in Utah. They did not have a creative writing major or anything like that. I'm sure there are colleges that do, but mine was not one of them. So I studied English instead, because I figured that was pretty close. So I read a lot of books. I wrote a lot of essays. They had a few creative writing classes. I took those when it fit in my schedule. Some other things I did while I was in school that helped me kind of become a better writer was I became a writing tutor at school. So I would go there and I would work with other college students. They'd bring in their papers and whatever questions they had about their papers, like how do I write a paper? What is the thesis? Is this organized well? And I would read it and I would help them with that. So I did that. That taught me a lot about writing, having to teach it to other people and all that. That was really helpful. And I also went on a study abroad to England and Scotland, and we read a lot of books from England and Scotland, and then we'd go to the places. So we went to where Shakespeare lived and wrote his plays and things like that, which was really cool. So those were things that I did in college to kind of pursue my interests of writing, as best as I could, and learn more about kind of books and writing and things. So the next thing I did was I got an MFA. Has anyone heard of an MFA before? It's okay if you haven't. I hadn't heard of it until I was in my senior year of college. So an MFA is a Master of Fine Arts. So it's a graduate degree. So you get it after college. And there's a lot of different types. You could get a Master of Fine Arts in visual art or in photography or in theater. But I got mine in creative writing. There's lots of different MFA programs for creative writing kind of all over. They're usually 2 to 3 years long, usually 2. And they're really awesome because I think they're really fun. And you just talk about writing. So you read books, you write your own stuff, you work with your other classmates who are also writing, so you have workshop groups with them, and they read your things and give you feedback. You read their stuff and give them feedback. I think one of the coolest things about MFA programs is the faculty who are teaching you are published authors. So you're working with published authors in your genre who've done what you want to do, and they read your writing and they tell you they read it and they brainstorm with you and they tell you how to make your writing better and how to make the story better, and it's really cool. Yeah.
What pathway do you need to take in college to get an MFA?
So the fun thing about an MFA is there isn't like a prereq necessarily, right? Like if you're going to be a doctor, to go to med school, you probably want to study something pre-med, right? You want to go pre-med or biology or something, right, related to that in college. They're not checking that in an MFA. So I majored in English. I could have majored in business or biology or math or whatever, right? When you apply to an MFA, you fill out like an application, like with who you are, but you send a writing sample. And really what they're looking at is the writing sample to see, like, you know, where are they at with their writing? Do we want to work with them, kind of thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, how did you get there, or what is like a good way to get there over time? Because I know you can't just start writing one day. And
Yeah.
Just all of a sudden, surprise, you got an MFA.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I would say, so the things that people would always tell me, and the things that helped me, were to read a lot, like as much. I mean, you're in school, right? So you're busy. You have a lot of homework and class and things. So as much as you're able to read things that you like, because you'll have fun for one thing, but you also learn a lot from reading. To just write as much as you can, right? Because those things will kind of go together. As you read, that will help your writing. As you keep writing, that will help your writing, right? So those are the two main things I would say, to read and to write. If you want to get really in depth with it, there's also books about how to write well that you can read. They call them craft books. I know we have some in the library here, so you can read books like that. That will help you as well. Getting feedback from people as you feel, that can be scary, but as you feel comfortable, having someone read your work and give you feedback, and then you revise it kind of based on that feedback. That's also really helpful too. So if you do those kinds of things, you know, in like a week, is that going to do a lot? Maybe not, but if you do it over time, your writing will improve. And then if you're like, I want to apply for an MFA, you'll be in a better position, right? Because your writing will be stronger. And it's also good to keep in mind they're not looking for it to be perfect, right? Because they're going to teach you how to write, but they want to see, you know, do they have enough solid skills that we can build on?
And do all colleges have MFAs?
So not all of them. It depends. So if you do a Google search, you can kind of see different schools. So like I know, like in California, I know like UC Irvine has one. Cal Arts in Southern California, they have one. And different MFAs will also have different genre focuses. So I went to Lesley, which is in Massachusetts, and I chose them because they had a track specifically for studying. They called it writing for children and young people. So writing for ages 0 to 18. And that's what I wanted to study. So I wanted to go to a school that had a program specifically for that. We have the car. But there are also programs for poetry, programs for fiction, nonfiction, screenwriting, playwriting. My school had one for writing like comic books and graphic novels, right? So they have a lot of different options depending on what you want to study. Yeah, those are great questions. Yeah. Another cool thing about MFAs is, you know, for college, not all the time, but a lot of the time, you're gonna decide where you want to go, and then you're gonna move there, right, and attend school there. You can do that for an MFA. There are programs that do that, and then there's also programs like the one I did called low residency programs, where you stay wherever you are. Like, so I stayed here. My school was in Massachusetts. At the start of every semester, I would go there for what they called residency, and I'd go to workshop groups with my classmates, and I'd meet with my faculty mentor for that semester, and we'd talk about what we're going to do, and I'd go to some, you know, other classes and things, and then I'd come back here and I'd do the work, and then I went back again at the start of the next semester. So that's another thing. is if you don't want to move, again, like you like where you are, but you want to go to the school and you don't want to move, that's an option. That's something you can do. So that's cool, as it's kind of more flexible in that way. Some things you'll do in an MFA typically is you will write a thesis project, which is kind of like a big, long, I think mine was about 60 or 65 pages of your own writing, or the equivalent if you're doing like poetry or screenwriting or something like that. So you'll do your own kind of longer writing project. You'll usually have to do a reading of this part of your writing. So this is a picture of me reading from my thesis before graduation. And then a lot of times you also have to teach like a workshop class. So I taught mine about how to write good villains. And I used Snape and Bellatrix from Harry Potter as my examples. Well, so I talked about how they're both good, but in different ways. Because you're talking usually about kind of writing technique in an MFA, as opposed to like the characters themselves, if that makes sense. So I specifically was talking about how J.K. Rowling uses backstory differently for them to develop them as antagonists, and kind of the differences between the two. So yeah, so I like them both. They're both pretty good villains.
I like them both, but I don't think that Snape would quantify as a villain. I think more of an anti-hero.
Yeah, he's very complicated, right? He's very complicated. Yeah, good. Yeah.
I have to talk about that. I'll talk to you about that later.
We'll talk about it.
Specific things I want to bring up.
I'm excited. I'm excited. So this is me at graduation. And then this is the first page of my thesis project. As you'll see, it's called The Butterfly's Sting. So this is actually the book I'm having published in October. This is where I worked on it. I wrote my first and second drafts of that book during my MFA. And the beginning part of it was my thesis. So that's where it all kind of started, which is pretty cool. So after my MFA, I started working here. That's when I started working here, was after I graduated. And I still knew I wanted to have this book published, but I didn't think it was quite ready yet. So I did another round of revisions. This is a picture. I have when I work on a book project, I have a playlist. Laura's nodding. So this is part of my playlist that I listened to while I revised and worked on it. This is my cat helping me sort of to do my revisions and things. So I would work on that kind of after work. I'd go home and work on my revisions. When those were done, and I felt like the book was ready to try to see if someone wanted to publish it, I started looking for an agent. Does anyone know what an agent does? Yeah.
Helps you publish your book.
Yes, that is
I
accurate.
actually had a question about that.
Yeah,
How do you get an agent?
that's a great question.
I think she's about to talk.
I am absolutely going to talk about that, because that's a big thing. How do you get an agent? So agents, I'm trying to think. So I'll tell you how I met mine. So the agent that I have, her name is Joan, and I actually met her through my MFA program. So that's another plug for MFAs, is they're great for networking, for meeting people who write and who work in the publishing industry. That is definitely not the only way to meet an agent. Most people do not meet an agent that way, but that's how I met mine. And I'll talk about that in a second. But so for finding an agent, you can look online to figure out who you want to maybe work with. You can look online. Pretty much all agencies will have websites. They'll list who their agents are. You can learn a little about them, see what kind of genres they do, what other authors they represent. So that's the first thing you'll want to do to find an agent, is pick who you might be interested in. And then you do this thing called querying. Querying is where what you send the agent will vary a little, but usually what you're going to send them is a short bio about yourself, a short description of your book, and a short, usually the beginning few pages of your, or in a novel context, your novel or a few poems or whatever it may be. And so that's called querying. So you send that to the agent, and then the agent will either say, "Thank you so much for sending that to me. I'm not interested, but keep looking," right? Or they'll say, "I like that. Can you send me the full manuscript?" And then if you get full manuscript request, you send that to them, and then they will either say, thank you for sending that to me, it's not for me, but keep trying with other people, or they'll say, I really like that, I want to sign you, and I want to try to sell this book. Right? Does that help? So that's kind of the overview. So when I was looking for an agent, this is an example of a rejection I got. I got rejected 8 times before I found my agent. Some people have less, some people have a lot more. It really varies from author to author. As you can see, she was super nice in her rejection, but it was a rejection. So this is kind of, if you are thinking about writing, it's good to know that this is kind of part of the industry. Is you will get no's, right? You will get rejections, and that's okay. It happens to literally everyone. So that's kind of part of it. With signing my agent, she first I queried her in December of 2019. She liked it. She liked the query. She asked me to send the full manuscript. So I did that, and then I waited, and I waited, and I waited. She did not get back to me until January of 2021. So it was over a year before I heard from her. I think that's a little longer than what happens to most people. COVID made things slow. But that's another thing to know kind of about writing is there is a lot of waiting, because there's something like this is out of my control, right? I can't control when she replies to me. So that's another thing to keep in mind is if you are thinking about writing is that there will be waiting. And while you wait, like I worked on other things. I brainstormed other projects. I was still working here, so I kept working. Like you find other things to do while you wait and see how it goes, right? If that makes sense. So in January 2021, she emailed me and said she was reading it and she was really liking it so far, and she'd let me know when she was done. And a couple days later, she said she finished the book and she really liked it, and could she call me? And that call was to say that she really liked it and she wanted to represent me, and did I want to sign with her? And so I did my research on her, figured out I was a legit agent. She had a lot of good clients. She had a good history. People had heard good things about her. And so I decided I do want to sign with you. And so I said yes, and signed my contract. And they sent me this nice little welcome packet. I took a picture of it. So that's how I got my agent. So the agent's role is to take your book and sell it to a publisher. So they'll take it and they'll send it to different editors that they know and pitch it to them, say, here's why you want to buy it, it's really good, that kind of thing. So I didn't do much during this phase. My agent handled all of this, which is kind of why another reason you want an agent, so that they can handle these things for you. So this is an email from when she first started, they call it going on sub or going on submission. So she sent it to, I think, like 8 or 10 editors to start. This is an email from when she did that. So she did that, and then I waited. I did more waiting. So I was on sub with this book for, I think, about a year and a half. I got rejected by 24 editors, which is a little high, but yeah. So I got rejected by 24 editors. Still have all the emails. They were very nice, but just for various reasons, they didn't want to buy it, which is fine. So an eternity later, on the 25th submission, I got this email from my agent. She said she had some news and she wanted to call me. And the call, actually took that call here over on San Jose. And the call was to say that she had an offer from a publisher called Groundwood. They are in Canada, and they had read my book and they really liked it, and they wanted to publish it if I was willing. So I did my research on Groundwood because I hadn't heard of them. You always want to do your research with these things, right? You don't want to just sign without kind of looking into it. So I looked into them. They looked really good. They had a lot of good books. The editor I was going to be working with, people had a lot of good things to say about her, and so I decided I wanted to do it. So I signed my book deal. So when you sign a book deal, and it's all official, they'll do like a little blurb, and it will go in Publishers Marketplace, and it will say kind of who the publisher is and the editor. It'll say that they've bought this person's book, here's what it's called, here's a little sentence about what it's about, and here's the agent who did the deal. So this is pretty standard. Any book deal that happens, they're going to get a little write-up like this. And that's always exciting when that happens. Here's the nice thing about getting an agent and publisher. You don't have to pay anything for that. That's actually how you know if something's legit. Like if an agent says to you, I'll sign with you if you pay me $500, you know they're not legit. So the way an agent makes their money is they take 15% of any money that you earn. So like when I signed my book deal, the publisher gave me an advance, which is some money up front for the sale of the book. My publisher took 15% of that. So that's how, or my agent, sorry, took 15% of that. So that's how the agent gets money. And then the publisher gets money because they earn money on book sales. And so they already have money kind of saved up. And so they use some of that money to give me an advance on this book. And then their hope is that they'll sell enough copies down the line to make up that advance and make more money, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I don't have to pay anything. So that's nice. You don't have to pay anything to do that. Yeah.
When you publish a book and other people buy the book, does any of the money go to you, or do you make money from publishing the book?
That's a great question. So yes and no. So when I signed my book deal, I got an advance, right? Which is what it sounds like, an advance. So they said, we'll give you this lump sum of money for your book. And then they also said that I will get royalties on books sold. So that number will vary depending on the book deal. It's usually between like 8 and 15% per book. So, but caveat is that as an author, you don't see that money until you earn back your advance, because it's an advance, right? So they're saying, we're going to give this to you, and we're assuming you're going to sell at least this many books, right? So you're going to earn at least this much money. So we'll give this to you now, and once you have sold enough books, once you've sold more books than that advance was, then you earn money. Does that make sense? So yeah, so you do earn money, but you have to earn back your advance first.
But on your first book, you don't earn money, do you?
Well, so it depends, right? So some people, if they sell like a ton of books, they're like, oh yeah, you've earned back your advance and you're going to get royalties. So if I sell enough books to earn back my advance, I'll get money from royalties on my book. But I have to sell enough books to earn back my advance, right? Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing. Yeah. These are good questions. Any other kind of money questions or other questions about things up to this point? Okay, cool. So then, what happens after the book deal? This goes back to your question, right, with the editor. So you do more revisions. So some people think like you sign the book deal and then the book immediately gets published. You sign the book deal and then you start working with the editor to prepare it for publication. So my book deal was finalized in May of last year. So then in June, I got in contact with my editor, and she sent me her first run of notes. And I took a video because she sent me a letter, and this was how long it was. Right? These were all the things she had to say to me. Now, most of these things were questions that she had as a reader. Like, I read this, and why does this character do this? And what about this? And what about that? And so what that told me as a writer was that I hadn't answered those questions well enough in the book, and I needed to fix that. So to go to Laura, remind me your precise question from earlier. Is about how do you trust the editor, kind of? Was that kind of it?
How do you find an editor that you not only work well with, but you also enjoy working with and trust?
Yeah. So at least in my experience, it's hard to say like, here's how you find an editor you trust, because I had the one offer, right? So I didn't have a lot of options necessarily, but I made sure before I signed the offer to ask. I went to my faculty mentors from grad school. I asked them, what have you heard about this publisher? What have you heard about this editor? And they all came back and said, we've only heard good things, and we've heard that's a really good editor. So I had to kind of take a leap of faith a little bit, because I hadn't worked with her, so I didn't know necessarily. But people who I did trust said that she was good. And when the offer was initially made to me, I asked kind of, what changes do you have in mind? And they told me some things, and I thought, I agree with those things, so we're probably going to be good, right? So you can also ask those things at the book deal phase to make sure that you guys are kind of on the same page. So it was a little bit of a leap of faith at the beginning, but then when she sent me her first letter and I read it and I was like, this is a lot. But when I thought about the questions, I was like, I agree with the questions of things she's saying. And she also called me, like we talk on the phone sometimes, and we would talk about things, and I liked the way she saw things. She asked me kind of my goals and things with the book. So her role was also not to like overtake me. She wanted to work with me to make the book stronger. And so it was more, I think sometimes people think editors like I'm gonna tell you what to do and you have to do it. And at least with Shelley, my editor, it was more collaborative, and she really wanted to hear what I thought, and she was just there to help me get my vision to work, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So that was the first round. These are some pictures from kind of later rounds, so I would keep track of where I was with the different chapter things. So like these would be yellow when I was in progress. They were green when I was done, so this is when I was done. This is my first round of revisions. I did like 4 or 5 rounds of revisions with my editor before we kind of considered it done. Each round was different. The first round took the longest. I started in June and I finished in November. So that was how long the first round took. The next round started in November, I finished in December, so it was much shorter. So each round got shorter as we went on, and the edits got smaller. There were fewer and fewer questions. I brought with me, so like this is the first round of notes she sent me. This is the second round of notes she sent me. As you can see, and these are, handwritten notes. So she's got like cross-outs and things. Other pages she has questions that she wrote in the margins, right? You probably see things like this when you get feedback on English essays. So it's like that, but on a much bigger scale. And then later phases, that, as you can see, the edits are smaller, right? They're getting smaller and smaller. Someone asked about kind of support. Like, are you on your own when you're doing this, or do you have people to help you? And the answer is you have people to help you. So the cool thing about a publisher is they have a whole team of people whose job is to prepare your book to be published and to sell it, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. So while I was revising, an artist was working on the cover, right? So this is the first draft of the cover they sent me. As you can see, it's red instead of orange, right? It's a little different. And then this was the final. So people were working on the cover. People are working on marketing plans, right? How are they going to get it into bookstores? How are they going to advertise and get people to buy it? They put, getting things ready to put it on Amazon, put it on Barnes & Noble so they can pre-order, setting a publication date, all kinds of things. So you have this whole team on the publishing side who are helping you, while the editor helps you with the writing and things like that. So then the question, I'm going to show you guys something that I ran out of time to show the last group. That's pretty cool, and I just got this yesterday. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sent my editor kind of the final draft of the book, and the next phase is for it to go to the typesetter. The typesetter is the person who takes the draft and they make it look all pretty and format it and design it so that it can go to the printer to be printed and bound into a book. And so just yesterday, I got the proofs for that, which is where they send you a PDF of what it's going to look like, and you kind of check it and make sure it's all right. So these are some screenshots for that. I was pretty excited when I got these yesterday. So this is kind of the like part of the copyright. That's like the title page. This is more of the title page, and then yeah.
Question,
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No,
but,
you're fine.
Not everyone is like the most deep or the most in touch with like the words and the grammar and all that.
Yeah.
But when you write a book, do you like write every single word and everything and all that, or do you ever? Is there ever a time where a writer or an author is gonna write their story and then someone else is gonna like edit it and then into like more complex language to where it'll be more interesting for a reader to.
It's a good question. I think
At the same time, it may be accused of like someone else is writing and not you, but it's
Yeah.
like it's your story at the same time.
well, so like when my editor gives me feedback, I'll give an example. Some of the feedback my editor would give me, was she would say, this scene is too long, or this paragraph is too long, and she would make suggestions on how to cut it, right, on places to make it shorter. And I would have the choice to accept those changes or not, or to do like a medium, like I'll take some of them but not all of them. And so in that context, like they're her changes, but they're her suggestions, but I'm choosing to accept them. And so like in that line, that's what editing is in publishing. So in that, it's still you, right? Because you still wrote it and you still chose the thing. If it's a matter of like, I'm writing this sentence and I want it to sound more complex or to have more flowery language or things, it would probably depend on the context, right? Like some might say like, oh, well, your friend wrote that, or whoever, your editor or whoever wrote that image and you didn't. It might vary. So you'd probably want to be careful with that. But I think also the thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of different kinds of writing styles and things, and they're all good for different reasons, right? And they appeal to different things. So I think also it's good not to feel pressure to write a certain way, because there's no like one right way to write, if that makes sense. And if with like grammar and things, like there'll be proofreaders and things to help with that, to make sure you're using right grammar and stuff. And so that like, you don't have to worry too much about that because people will help. As long as people can understand what you're saying and then know how to, the proofreader will help catch that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was a good question. Any other kind of questions at this phase? I think we have like a minute left. If you want a sneak preview, this is the first page. This was the last thing I was going to show you. Was the typeset. Do you want to move closer, Laura?
A little bit, but I also want to keep this a surprise.
Oh, that's fair. I respect that. Yeah.
You don't have to give me every single detail, but I actually wonder, what is your book about?
It's about a girl. She's a boxer. She's a teenage boxer, and there's the bell. I'll answer this, and you can go if you want, but if you want to hear, she's a boxer. She's in she's in an underground fight club, and she's trying to raise money to get her and her siblings away from their abusive uncle who they're living with. Yeah, so that's what it's about, is her trying to win at this fight club and get away from this uncle. Yeah.
So short, sweet, and simple.
Yeah. You've done your research. I would love it if you read it. It comes out October 7th. You've done your research, Laura. I like that. Perfect.
All right, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for coming by and for asking good questions. If anyone has any other questions at any other time, you know where I am. I'm always happy to talk to you.
I actually hope to publish a book one day, so.
That would be awesome. I have a handout that I completely forgot about. You might like. It's just kind of got the main points, and it's got stuff you can do now to get ready.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
have
you
a
guys.
wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Super
I
fun.
have like 6 different stories that I